Okay, welcome everyone. And today we have a coffee break session. So this is coffee break session number 3, and I have my lovely co-host Santosh Kumar with me. So thanks Kumar for joining in tonight. We're actually recording at 9 p.m. Singapore time. How are you doing anyway? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, a little tired, Douglas, but yeah, it's been a while since we had our last coffee chat and our last recording. So I'm pumped up for today's recording.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, you're right. It's been a while, and I thought I'd take a few minutes to kind of explain the situation. So obviously we have a fallen comrade, Stu. He's not feeling well, and here in Singapore, there's been kind of like a high spike of COVID cases. I mean, that's not the real reason why we're not filming in person, but yeah, but it's just that just to make things easier for Santosh and me, so we're doing this through Zoom. Then the other thing really is that, like, yeah, right, it's been a while because I like to really address our viewers here, which is as you can see, we pumped up quite a lot of content over the last couple of weeks. And we kept that focus because we just been really interested to get interesting guests on. So one example is Muhammad Taib, and he talked about religion last week. Santosh and I had this video where we talked to Aaron Ho, right? And he wrote a book on Chinese privilege. So we are really like trying to get interesting content out there. So we didn't leave much time for us to have this coffee break session. But now that we're having it right now, I want to take a few moments to address, our audience, whoever's out there, you're watching this video. First thing I want to say is really a huge thank you for, watching our videos. I feel like actually while we were doing all that kind of work, interviewing guests, we may have kind of like forgotten to acknowledge that we are not doing this for ourselves. In some sense, we are also doing this for the audience. We want people to watch our videos, to listen to our content, and to learn something from it, really. And of course, in this coffee break session, it's not so focused. It's a bit more directionless, but at the same time, we still want to fulfill that kind of role. So that's one. And then two, I guess, even though we don't say it loud enough, but we do like uh, participation. So we are a YouTube channel, so that means maybe you drop a comment, hopefully you like and you share the videos that we put up. And one of the things that, and Santosh, I guess, it's good for you to agree with me on this or concur with me on this, which is all our guests so far, they've always left this beautiful feedback that they enjoyed the space we provided. They feel like they can be free and authentic and honest. Many of our guests have maybe been on other platforms, sometimes even state-sponsored media, and they've dropped comments saying that, hey, at least we are not so curated, and we're not trying to have an agenda in particular. We are really just trying to be ourselves and honest and just invoke talk new thoughts and interesting discourse. Yeah. Do you
At
have something
this,
you want to add?
yeah, no. So at this juncture, I would like to invite our dear viewers, if there are spells to be broken, if you would like to suggest any spells that you feel that you've been bound by or bound to, let us know in the chat box below, in the comment box below. Write them down and we'll explore those topics and we'll try to break those spells. Because
Yeah, I think
this is
that's so
all
good.
in the spirit of breaking the spell, right? That's the name of our channel. So that's what we want to do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, we really have that kind of invitation. And I mean we also have to acknowledge that we have our own points of view about certain things, issues in the world. And we don't come in neutral. I certainly am not coming in neutral. But I think we all probably are on the same page about what is conventional thought out there, what are the kind of new directions and ideas we need to explore, because we simply are bounded by a certain kind of structure or narrative out there. And even saying all this, right, I also want to emphasize another thing about our channel, which is we really, at least for me, I really try our best to be casual, to show people that you don't have to be like this very dense, very flowery intellectual to try to engage with these ideas. Yeah, and I really hope sometimes in our videos we don't come across that way. So again, just like a public service announcement to you guys out there, that if you're listening to us, like I really want us to grow in the sense that we connect with you and you enjoy what you're listening to, and it really helps, to hear a comment or two from you guys. In fact, we've made kind of a few friends through this channel, right, Santosh?
Absolutely. We've made a lot of good friends who have their own fair share of spells that they wanted to be broken. And I think, yeah, the more we gather people, the more like one spell actually helps to break another spell because of the interconnectedness of various issues. This is actually the power of network effects. Yeah, when one person comes in, actually that leads us to another topic and another person, and then there is this ripple effect through the entire ecosystem in our society, and healing takes place.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned this about ecosystems and networks, right? That's also something I thought about as well, which is I guess some viewers might be also confused with our channel because we are based in Singapore. We have some local people on as our guests, but you can see also we had some international guests as well. So we had the interview with Brian Van Norden, and we also had Needham Wolf, a virologist who's a personal friend to Ong Su. So we are still actually trying to cater to a very wide buffet of topics and audiences. So if you're not from Singapore, for example, we hope that you can still find our content relevant. We obviously draw a lot on American literature, but also literature from all around. And we both want to address the issues on a global level, but also locally as well. Because at least in Singapore, we can both tell you assuredly that we don't have enough people like that. And the other thing actually, in terms of what we've been trying to develop with this channel is we try to find that local talent, right? But sometimes the local talent don't even want to be publicly, they don't want to be out there in public. And that is, sadly speaking, kind of the political environment we have in Singapore. And we struggle against that.
Local female talent,
Yeah,
especially.
yeah.
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 So I think
Actually,
it speaks of maybe whether we have good enough or friends who are females and who want to step up to just be on the show, or I don't
yeah.
know, what's the issue? Is it us, or is it just
Yeah, if you're female and you have been interested in our show, you can almost say we're looking for a talent search. We're performing a talent search. Yeah, but no, but Santosh is, you're right? Like we have sometimes spoken to people. Honestly, sometimes these people are busy. We totally understand that they are very committed to some of the work that they're doing. But yeah, it is just hard to grab someone and to say, will you be comfortable coming onto a YouTube platform, and one is so small right now, and actually address something that could be controversial. And I mean, I don't think anything that we do will hurt your reputation or anyone's reputation, but it certainly can be very you're opening yourself in a vulnerable space because you may be subjected to attacks, and that's not easy.
I count myself as an example. I was quite hesitant before I decided to even come on the show. I had a lot of imaginary fears. Just like fears, they're all false but imaginary, and I was gripped by my fears. And I was, after the first video was out, after the second, I was always afraid, like, would this affect my life, my career, or something? Yeah, but after a while, when you get a hang of it, and when you feel a bit more comfortable talking about things, then these fears don't have a strong grip on us.
Yeah, so actually, I want to ask you, Santosh. You joined us a little bit later because Ong Su and I started this first, but really you came in very early because very quickly, I should say, because we didn't have much content until you already joined us. So I'm curious to hear from you. Your evaluation so far, your experience. You just mentioned some fears, and you've been very successful at combating them. But yeah, how do you evaluate like what we've been doing, or how do you feel even about yourself being on a YouTube channel?
I guess I think it goes two ways. As much as I feel like I'm a lot more careful with what I want to say for fear of negative repercussions, I become a bit more. But the extreme of that is self-censorship, right? But on the other hand, the more the spells are broken, and the more I feel I'm given a space and an outlet to talk about things that I have been imprisoned by, the more I feel at ease, and the more liberating it becomes. So I think it's really a lot about like my own conditioning. Maybe I grew up feeling that my voice didn't matter, and so this was an entire journey of like even growing into my own voice and my own truth. Yeah, so I think this has been the greatest discovery for me, is that like I can be comfortable just saying what I want, and it's just my version of the truth. Whereas in the past, I used to be very, very careful about what I will want to say, and be extremely worried about the negative repercussions of yeah, just speaking up. So this has been for me personally, a journey of healing, Douglas. Yeah, it's been a journey
This
of healing,
that's
because
beautiful.
I came from a background where, you know, you have to be very careful about what you say, and it's to be scripted and all. And now I feel, yeah, I'm just getting back into my own true nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love what you said, and you know, like with what I'm doing here as well, you know, and I want to ask you this before I talk about myself a little bit. So I want to know from you, before coming onto this platform, right? I mean, when you talk about finding a authentic voice or being able to express yourself without reservations, have you not been able to find that physically, right? Even among your own circle of friends or within your family, you know, and does it really make a difference, like you being publicly right now on this channel versus, you know, if you've done it privately?
I think it makes a tremendous amount of difference. And this is why, Douglas, I think in Singapore, we don't nurture spaces for introspection and contemplation. We don't nurture spaces for real, authentic, vulnerable connection and dialogue. And this is a key part of the psyche of Singapore and the kind of spaces that we've designed. And what we are creating here, which is a container for discourse and for conversation, is going to be very powerful. What we're doing is we are actually yeah, I think at the beginning of the launch of the channel, there was this saying, right? The quality of conversations depends on the container, the quality of the container that holds the conversation. It's a lot about holding space. And I feel that for the past 30 over years of my life, I've never been in spaces where I truly felt I could speak about things and deliberate in a very introspective and contemplative manner. And I think more than ever, this is very much needed in our society. We need to learn how to introspect and contemplate. That is very important if we want to survive, not just as a nation, but as a human civilization or human species. It's going to be very important. Yeah. So this channel for me is educational. It is for me, right? It's what we are giving to the next generation. We are planting seeds that will bear fruit for generations to come, that will give shade to generations that we will never ever see. And I think it's very important that we plant those seeds now.
Okay, you know, I remember we had a conversation like this when we had your first interview, and I remember me and I'm still reacting like, oh wow, you know, like we don't have such grand ambitions, but yeah, but I really like what you said, because let me put it in my world as well. Like, what I find within my own social circle is that so I'm a very genuine guy. That's my personality. I really don't beat around the bush, and of course, I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm tactless. There are occasions where I don't try to venture my true opinion because maybe I don't want to offend someone, or you know, there's something more important at stake, say friendship, or working relationship with someone that I may disagree with. So, but you know, like when I talk to my friends, I'm quite introspective. I try to dig deep into people's problems to help them, obviously, not to poke fun at them or anything like that. But yeah, but that's the idea. And according to what you said, right, in accordance with what you said, what I find sometimes is that people may be psychologically afraid of approaching that kind of meeting that kind of rawness. So a good example, which I kind of have right now, because it just happened just personally in my life just like recently is like when I talk to, say, a personal friend about the relationship problem. And when it comes to relationships, sometimes people may be afraid to get to the raw truth of a situation or the nature of the relationship. So perhaps, for example, I may have to come out and say, look, I don't think you guys should be together, as an example, right? And it's a very incorrect thing to say in most contexts, right? You should not be in a position to morally judge and to state what is the appropriate action for something that's so private. And I totally get that. It's not that I'm oblivious or clueless to that kind of norms, but I think someone needs to be, and devil's advocate is not the right expression or the right characterization here, but just someone needs to kind of say something that people are afraid to say, but say it in a way that is maybe with tact and also at the same time trying to arrive at a bigger truth. So that's the personal side of who I am. But now with this channel, it's kind of like extrapolating that and now saying that, hey, let's look at society, and are there certain truths about society and let's say progress, or let's say values that we so-called aspire to, and we're not really meeting those values. And this is very hard to scale, right? Because we are not a public media institution. The public media institutions maybe are not servicing that role, going to what you said about contemplation and introspection. And so that's why we're trying to plug in the gap here. And I really feel that this is also not necessarily a local, like Singaporean only issue. I think every place is different. I think some countries maybe they do this better also, because it depends on what the structure of the public media institutions are like. But in some place like Singapore, where it's very repressed, very limited freedom of expression for speech, it's clearly an issue that you and I both agree that we have to address. Yeah. And actually, before you go, right, I want to ask you this, because I want you to then address this question for our viewers, right? You have been on public programs, and you had a chance to actually speak your honest opinions. Can you tell us, like your experience and what you feel like when you compare being on, our channel and as compared to being on those other channels?
One thing I've learned, right, is power is very closely correlated with the narrative that is being shaped. So if someone has power, that person has a lot of say in how the narrative is being shaped and what is the final narrative that is being shaped. So what I noticed, right, is especially when I'm in public media, I go into someone else's court, or what you call home ground or turf. And then I have to play according to the rules of the game set by the person who invited me into that space. Now, that person often will have an agenda. There is usually an agenda behind that.
Yep.
And so you need to be very careful when you're being invited into spaces like that, whether there is power, and behind that power, if there is an intention or agenda to shape a certain narrative. Yeah. And if there is the presence of the power, you would be co-opted. However hard you try, you would be co-opted into the narrative that the person is trying to shape. Yeah. So this is my biggest learning. And so what I learned in my entire experience is to look for spaces with psychological safety, authenticity, and vulnerability. Google did an empirically backed, evidence-backed research on what made the best teams perform at the highest of levels. It was never about the quality of the talent. It was never about who is on the team, but it was always about how the team works together. And data showed one essential quality, which was psychological safety. Two very quantitative measures of psychological safety that I will urge our viewers to watch out for when you're in a space for conversations and dialogue. Number one, equality in distribution of conversation turn-taking. How are the people talking? How much distribution or how much time does each person have in a conversation, and is it equally distributed? The person who has a disproportionate amount of time or airtime in the conversation, that is the person who holds power, and that is a sign of low psychological safety. Number two that you have to watch out for is social sensitivity, the ability to intuit by the people who are present in the conversation who is tuning in and who is tuning out. The ability to understand that and to see whether the rest of the group is trying to build an inclusive environment to allow everyone to tune in and to allow everyone to be heard. And that intuition is based on how people are reacting bodily and through their facial expressions. So these are some things I've learned as I'm being invited into spaces for conversations, especially conversations that are contentious. Yeah. So now I become a lot more discerning with the spaces I want to go to. Yeah. And I always urge our viewers here, look for spaces with psychological safety, authenticity, and vulnerability. You can never go wrong there. And if there's a fourth ingredient, which is quite similar, the sincerity factor. Yeah. Or intellectual humility, a space where everyone is able to admit that we don't know, we are all blind, but we're all working out something together.
Wow. So I really have to ask you this, Santosh. Like, do you have this point at the back of your head? And like how do you I'm actually okay, so just for our viewers as well to know. So Santosh and I are not like personal friends in the sense that we didn't know each other before this channel. We really only got to know each other because of this channel. Yeah. So I don't know whether the viewers have been catching up, but I have been blown away with the the kind of mental agility and the theoretical points that you always have in your head. And this topic is not planned. We didn't plan for this, and you just brought it up just like that. So time for me to reclaim some power, and to ask you, like, are you like, how should I put this? Do you have this point in your head because of the actual empirical experiences you have, or is it because of something that you read and then it just kind of jives and becomes a lived experience for you?
I think for me, it's pain. The pain in my
Pain.
life.
Yeah,
The
pain, the
pain.
greatest teacher. Yeah.
The greatest teacher. So I've been in spaces where I felt left out. I've
Right.
been in spaces where I was marginalized, where I was excluded, and I was silenced. I didn't have the vocabulary to protest and to speak out. I didn't have the courage to speak out. And over time, I learned that it's important to have the vocabulary, to have the ability, the cognitive ability to, or capacity to speak out and to challenge the status quo. And I think pain and marginalization were the key drivers to acquiring the knowledge on what it takes to hold space. So I'm a facilitator, I'm a trained facilitator, and in facilitation is an art. And a lot about facilitation is a lot about the art of holding space. Yeah. So I'm very passionate about holding spaces for conversations, for healing. Yeah. And so so it's the pain from the past that drives what I want to do in the future, which is create spaces for healing, for people to dialogue and heal. Yeah. So I think that's where maybe it's the passion. But if you were to ask me something about an issue that I don't really care, for example, fashion, or
Right.
what's on the latest, like local media or movies. You were talking about movies.
Yeah.
That's my pet peeve, right? So
Yeah.
I won't be able to give you a commentary. Yeah.
Sure.
Because
But
I've not been scarred by movies.
right. Yeah, no, I mean, and actually it's something that I may actually want to bring up later, which is, and it's a fun exercise really, and I wanted to do this fun exercise because it's kind of like for us to demonstrate to our viewers, right? Like, actually, you and I are very different. I think on paper, if I were to do this exercise with you, let's see, we have time for it later, right? I want us to write down like what we are like and our hobbies and everything. And actually, I would dare to say that we are very, very different from each other. But here we are having a great conversation, and we've been obviously having a great friendship ever since the founding of this channel. But before, if we do go there, we go there. But I do want to ask you this so that it will then segue into one of the questions we did at least prepare for tonight, which is about friendship and it's about helping people. So before we go there, right, I do want to ask you, because you mentioned this many times, and I really want our viewers to not just hear you in the abstract. So you said you've been marginalized, you felt out of place or outcast. Can you just at least take one example that you feel comfortable talking about so that our viewers can get a sense of what it's like to be in your shoes?
Yeah, I would say it would be my experience in the civil service. It's still haunting me, but yeah, I if there's something that I notice is called power differentials or power distances. Yeah, and as long as there's someone in the room who has got many more years under his or her belt, who's more experienced, who's got more power, that person has every say in decisions that are being made. People who are young and new to the environment or who have very little power have got no say. And I think that experience taught me a lot about power distances and power dynamics. Yeah, and yeah, I felt those spaces were really not egalitarian in nature. Like I felt very lousy. I felt very belittled. Yeah. And as much, yeah, I had a sincere desire and care to do things, but I was dismissed, and yeah, so I think a lot of those painful experiences uh, strengthened my resolve to
Mm.
become a better leader or a better conversationalist or a better space holder. Like you learn not only from the best, right? I think if you're in an environment and you are with like very bad people, you have also a lot to learn about being sensitive. Yeah. So
Yeah.
nowadays, I look out for people who are very silent in a room where there's dialogue happening. I'm very attuned to that. Like, so I will, because I know how it feels, right? If you don't know how it feels to be silenced and to be invisible, yeah, I think we all have that experience. Like, we were invisible, not noticed, not seen, not heard, not felt. Yeah. So I think, but that builds sensitivity. We can now sense it when someone is feeling left out. And then what we do is to actually bring that person into the discussion or dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, for me, I think this is something that you and I sometimes, if our viewers have watched us enough, they've probably seen that we sometimes have come to disagreements on certain things. I mean, they are very, not big viewpoints, but this is going to be one of them. Like, you said just now, and I'm not trying to make it bigger than what you meant it to be, but you said something like maybe we've all gone through it, or we've all been an outcast, we've all been that lonely soul, and I'm like, no, man.
Okay.
Let me try to explain what I mean, right? Which is like, so maybe you might be surprised to hear this from me because you don't know me, like we've said, you don't know me like in depth, right? Like we haven't talked about our past and our childhoods and stuff like that. I had a really really rough secondary school childhood. Years of going through secondary school. I was the weirdo. I was the person that nobody liked. I went through bullying. A childhood friend of mine who actually works for but he works for something like an NTUC, something like that. But the idea was that he actually asked me not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, to pen something about my bullying experience. Yeah, because like I was like prime sample for talking about that. Yeah, and you said something that really resonated with me because I was kind of like that when I was young. So I'm talking about like primary school, secondary school. I always had this affinity for the silent and the marginalized. So I had this friend who was very poor, and I would just give him some of my money just for recess because he just I just feel bad for the guy. Like it's like he can only spend I don't know, like maybe just a couple of dollars for recess, and I would literally just give him some of my money because actually I was pretty privileged at that time because my father was doing quite well, so I had pretty good allowance, yeah. So there was that, and then there was also like this is a very funny memory I have. When I was in primary school, there was this kid, and I know he's just a foreigner, he's not Singaporean, and he was extremely quiet. I can kind of remember his face. He's very fair skinned and just no one paid any attention to him. Like no one would talk to him, and I mean he wasn't really even being weird. He was just not someone who could maybe know how to express himself or knew how to get along with someone that was Singaporean perhaps. And so I would hang out with him quite a lot, and I don't even remember what we did or as kids what kind of fun did we get up to, but I just remember just being around him all the time because just trying to make him feel like, oh, okay, if you don't have anyone to talk to, you can talk to me. Yeah, and actually, I also record this thing that I want to catch up with you on. You said that your childhood ambition was to be a detective, right? You remember that? Yeah. And I remember that actually when I was in primary school, and to kind of be more sociable, I mean, me being a kid, I actually created a Dick Tracy club. Do you know the guy Dick Tracy?
No, no.
Oh, you don't know? See, that's why you need to watch movies. Okay, but anyway, Dick Tracy was a popular detective at the time. Yeah, so
Okay.
Dick Tracy was based on a comic. So I don't think you'll find books on him, but the idea was that I kind of idolized the figure, and I created a little club with some friends. And I mean, we really didn't do any detective work. I mean, we were just playing because we are just like, juveniles. But yeah, but I kind of went out my way to kind of like do stuff like that. And I guess that ever since then, it's always been something in me to kind of create that kind of space, like you said, but also at the same time, just to acknowledge and to just call out, right, to people who are not marginalized, people who are privileged, who are in the majority, and just to look at the other side of the room, right? There's other people out there that you need to pay attention to, and it would really help them a lot if we pay some attention to their plight. Yeah. So anyway, now that leads on to for me to ask you the question that we have prepared for tonight, which is: do you have a friend that you really like to help but you can't?
Yeah, I have several friends actually who are in that situation. Yeah, I
So
do.
can you describe one person at least? I mean, we're
Yeah.
not giving any identifying
One
information.
person, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very tough to help someone who can't help himself or herself. Yeah, because ultimately there's only so much advice you can provide and so much support you can provide. But I think it's always up to that person to unlock the prison that they are in. So it's almost as if we have locked ourselves into our own prisons, and we have actually put the keys inside our own prison cell. So the keys inside, like, we know all we need to do is to just put the key into the keyhole and then open the thing and just to move out, right? But I think a lot of us are just within our own prisons. No matter how much cajoling we do to others to, like, hey, just pick up the key and like open and walk, yeah, there's only so much you can do. And everyone, what I've realized is, yeah, the greatest lesson I think I've learned is, things take time and you need to have patience. And most importantly, it's not my conception or my projection of what the person needs, but to really be in tune with the real actual needs of the person that the person might not have the ability to articulate. Yeah, so actually there is what we call in SEL, social emotional learning, unmet and unarticulated needs. And it takes a lot of skill in being in tune with that. Yeah, and I think I've kind of failed in that particular instant with the friend who I really wanted to help. Like, I couldn't even understand what was the need and how I can help the person.
Okay, so I understand that you don't want to give specific details, but at least in a general sense, can you tell us if like the problem is psychological, or if it's say financial, economical, or it's like, can you give us
Yeah,
some
it's
idea?
a
Because
mix of so it's a mix of many. So it's
yeah,
health. The person has a health crisis,
true. Okay.
and then the person has got a psychological crisis as
Oh,
well. Yeah, so it's compounding, a multiple compounding crises, and
right.
then financial on top of all of this. And the person has not settled into society as well. The person has got struggles with identity. Yeah, so it's like multiple crises that are stacking upon one another, and they're all interlinked. Yeah, and when you're caught in the rut, you're caught in the rut. And the more you try to struggle, the deeper you sink into the rut. And that's, I think, precisely what this person is feeling, and this person is going through. So it's a mix of economical, financial, psychological, and physical, like health. And
Let me explore this with you before I share my story, right? Because
yeah,
you got something really rich here for us to explore. So I find that when it comes to psychological issues, that's really hard because like you just mentioned just now, self-awareness is one thing, right? And even someone might be even aware. Let's use an example. Maybe someone's aware that he has a gambling addiction problem, right? But being aware of the problem is not the solution, right? You actually need to devise strategy, specific coping mechanisms, and intervention even, right, to get over this. So in your experience, right, is it like this person is not perhaps receiving enough professional care, or is it like the person has received professional care, but and it maybe even care and therapy and assistance from people like you know, being friends and maybe family members, but there's still something, you know, that's still a major hurdle to overcoming the problem?
Yeah, I think for sure, one, it's not enough care. But number two is there aren't sufficient. I think it takes a village to help someone, and the biggest requirement or the biggest need for this person is a community of psychosocial support. Yeah, and not one individual can meet all the psychological and social needs of that one person. Yeah, and I think in a society that's very individualistic, competitive, and combative, a lot of people are suffering from pangs of loneliness because they have not built that social support structures and systems that take time to nourish and to build. Yeah, and yeah, it's sad to see this. Yeah, so I think it's yeah, both a lack of support and yeah, people who just care. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, it's a really pivotal topic for me as well, and I'll tell you why. I haven't even gone to my story yet, but my example, I mean, but I have at times experienced that sort of the same what do you want to call it, mental blocks, as you mentioned, which is you try to help someone, but they're not perhaps receiving the help, or they're not trying to uh, um, absorb it, right? Like they actually may even reject it, for example. And you know, you mentioned something about community support as well, and I find that quite funny actually in the world that we live in right now. That so you may maybe disagree with me on this, but I think we all have a lot of friends. Like if you would ask me right now, do I have friends? Yeah, I do. And in fact, I'll tell you, you know, I said something about my secondary school days. I was a very different person back then. I always considered myself to be someone with no friends and would never have friends. I even had a slogan for that. So actually, the irony I find is that I think a lot of people right now have friends, but the problem is the friends, and it goes back to the original, the beginning of our conversation, is that these friends are maybe afraid to um, not incorporate, maybe it's not the right word, but to be able to withstand the vulnerability and the risk of getting closer to a friend and helping them. Yeah, and let me try to explain that with a little bit more detail. So I think like when I have this person in my life, and this person is a close friend, and this person was having like work issues. Yeah, and I was trying to just kind of like mentor the person to say that, you know, work issues, you know, seriously speaking, some of the work issues that a person can experience is very common. And I'm not trying to belittle it, just saying that it's common. And you just cannot look at your colleagues as a source of social support. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge that it won't be that you know, bastion of warm support that you want to have, and you have to look outside. And furthermore, when you look outside, you need to let down your guard. You cannot be someone that um, doesn't want to meet up, doesn't want to chit chat, doesn't want to talk about the work problems. I mean, you really have to open up. And only when you do that, right, then I feel that the person who's on the receiving end, so presume that it's me for now, then I can listen to you, then I can actually try to address it. And I mean, not saying that I would be the miracle therapist or the person to ameliorate all your issues, but at least I'm that outlet, right? And that's tough actually in being a friend, because it means that, let's say if I'm counseling this person, and then counsel's maybe not the right word, but at least I'm trying to support this person. Maybe I can't help you financially, or I can't help you to fix your workplace problems, but I will try to coach you through life. I will try to help you see the bigger picture, that whatever problems you have right now, really, they will go away one day, and life will go on. Yeah. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, I have a sense or that there's a fundamental need for all human beings. Is the need to be seen, is the need to be heard, it's the need to be felt, and it's the need to be held. And I feel like we can offer this. It's free. You can offer your space and your presence, and that's the most important thing. Your being, your human being, and just your presence, and that's very comforting. And a lot of our friends, when they are in times or in situations of despair, they don't want advice, they don't want correction, or they don't want you to offer a solution. All they want is just a listening ear. Like all they
Right.
want is your presence that envelopes them like a blanket. I'm here for you, and my presence is enveloping you, and I care for you. And I think that in itself is healing enough. Like there's someone there for me. Yeah. So I think, yeah, it's simple things like that we can offer.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, yeah, so now I can talk about my story because it's kind of like reinforcing what I'm saying, which is, so my answer for the question is that I have this friend, and he's someone that again, going back to what I said earlier, I tend to look out for people who are a bit more vulnerable or not so popular basically in society. So this friend of mine, he's someone I consider very dear, even though we don't see each other very often because he's very busy. And just to give some attributes, right? Like he's working class, so he works like shift hours. So it's very hard on him. He's married. He has 3 kids. And like he's not really like a middle class or upper middle class kind of socioeconomic status. So it's really hard to raise 3 kids and a wife that doesn't work. And there are reasons for that, for why the wife isn't working as well. Then there's his parents, and one parent had a health crisis, a health issue, and cannot work anymore. And the other parent, unfortunately, has a kind of mental issue, so she can't work as well. So like I've been to my friend's house, and he like, even though I mentioned all these issues, but I didn't feel any even drip of like misery or misfortune in the house because the kids were there. I was even talking to the kids. They're very young. With the wife, even though we have the kind of a language barrier because I'm more English speaking and she's more Chinese speaking, but we try to get along. And my friend is very, very warm-hearted. Like he would prepare like a big meal. And there was one day that we chose to meet outside, and we chose to meet at a food court. I always am considerate about the cost, like making sure it's not too expensive for him. And actually, honestly, I would treat him all the time. Usually, I try my best to. But he arrived earlier, and he bought so much food for us. Like he bought so much, like even though it's just a food court, but he bought this, he bought that. I was like, dude, like that's way too much food. Yeah, but I knew why he did it, because he wanted to extend the time that we could be together. And he's always someone that would take a selfie, because even though it's like an ordinary meeting anyway in a food court, but heck, it's still a great experience to just see each other and to just chit chat and about life. And the reason why I want to bring up him as an example is because I want to talk about both personal and structural issues. So on the personal side, right, this is a working class person. And look, I'm a bit blunt, right? This person is not like a member of the intellectual class, right? Let's put it that way. And so he can only level up to a certain position in society. There's only so far he can go. Of course, you can always insist that he should study harder, he can go back to school, blah, blah, blah. But honestly speaking, these are very impossible solutions for him right now when he has to raise three kids, right? 3 young kids. So that's really hard enough, right? Then there is also the idea that on a societal level, there's only so much pay he can receive. He's already working shift hours. He does a lot of OT in order to earn more, obviously. Not, I should also mention he has a grandmother that's still in a senior home. So he has to visit her, like every once a week just to check in on her. And so I look at a guy like that and I'm amazed with the tenacity, the optimism, even spiritually speaking. Like he's just someone who doesn't seem down on life. And I can't imagine myself being in his shoes. Yeah. And so like I look at people like that and I think, like on an individual level, there's not much we can do, right? Like we just mentioned, he meets me, we have a good time. It just helps to take stress off, what he experiences on a day-to-day basis. But on a societal level, we got to do more. And I think people like that deserve more, right? They are not lazy. They are disadvantaged by their circumstances and also by who they are. And I'm not like backing away from such a statement. It's just fair enough to say that some of us are not going to be financial bankers, not going to be CEOs. Not every one of us is going to be like that. So you got to provide these people with a better safety net. They deserve much better than what they're getting in life. Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Douglas. Is the word safety net. I agree with you. We don't have sufficient safety nets in our society. There are a lot of people who are falling through the cracks despite all the financial assistance schemes that we have from the government. And it's very sad. It's a very sad sight to watch and to witness. Yeah, like I mean, just personally, right? In my family, it's three of us, and all three of us are working to support all three of us. This is
Mm.
one friend of yours supporting eight people, including him, if I'm not wrong, or nine, because
Yeah, that's
it's
quite a lot, right? Like
three children,
his wife,
his wife, and then he's got
his parents are still around.
two parents, and then
Yeah,
the other parent, right? So
yeah,
that, and then how about himself? I
yeah,
mean, you have to support yourself, right? How about your own needs? So that's
yeah,
eight people, eight people's burden. Like imagine eight people on the shoulders of one person, and then in
yeah,
my household, it's three of us shouldering three people's burden. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, you know,
yeah.
like it's it's just crazy. I cannot imagine being in his position, and and despite the fact that it's three of us supporting three people, I'm not secure. I don't feel
Right.
secure. How 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 would this person be feeling? Like, it's just inconceivable. I don't
Yeah,
know, how have we created a society? You know, we call ourselves a socialist society. You know, this is exactly the socialist principles of the governing elite, right? Like they wanted to create a socialist
yeah. I
society.
need to question you on that. Whenever have you ever heard the government say we are a socialist society?
Yeah. Okay.
Come
So
on,
I
come on.
mean,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
But I get what you're saying. But go through that a little bit with me, right? Like
yeah.
you
No, but
feel from the ruling government that ruling party, let's put it that way.
the
That
narrative is that
yeah,
we are caring and we are socialist in
yeah,
nature.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, we care, there's welfare, and
yeah,
you know, yeah. But after looking at what's going on, I think there's a very strong element of social Darwinism in our society. Meaning, if they can't live themselves, then they'll just through natural selection be selected out over the generations, and they'll be eliminated. You know, and so you have just a certain class of people, and this is very unhealthy, in my personal opinion.
yeah. Yeah, some great points you brought up, Santosh. So, like for example, how when you look at say my friend, right, as an example, right, and your situation where you're comparatively sort of better, right, because three is to three ratio, whereas his is like 1:8 ratio, right, and yet even for someone like you don't feel secure, um, and I think that's why when it comes and one important point I should bring up because you mentioned it about social safety net. So a friend like mine, right, he wouldn't qualify for social assistance because he's an able working adult. And the truth is that, as I just illustrated with his story, he works very hard. So there's no way the government's going to look at him like a recipient for social assistance. They would look at him and say, okay, you're pretty good, like you can make money on your own. Yeah, but this is where I feel the problem with our policy. And then also, let's put it this way, right? It's not just about Singapore. I think around the world, under this umbrella of what we call neoliberalism, right, is sort of placed, the stress is placed on the individual to level up on their own. So it's sort of incumbent on my friend to be able to study hard, to rise up and to earn more money that way, and so provide better security for his family. But when you're already stuck in it's not a deadbeat job, but it's just more like you're stuck in this job. It's very hard. I mean, once you work shift hours, which is close to 8 to 10 hours a day, right? You come home, you gotta spend time with your kids, you gotta spend time looking after your elders. Where are you gonna have the time to try to study hard and level up, right? And then furthermore, and I can get like personal with the story. Like he tried his best to be like a TCM practitioner because his father is a TCM practitioner. But like I said, the father had a health crisis, so now he doesn't even have a shop anymore. And my friend tried his best to study for it, but he couldn't. It's just like some materials are just way too hard, right? And
Yeah.
way too complicated for some of us. It's like asking me right now to be a physicist, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's not going to happen overnight for sure. Maybe I
Yeah.
won't even succeed at that. So I think that's what's wrong with this
They are,
mindset, this mentality that is now transformed to an economic reality for all of us, which is, well, if you can't um, move ahead in society and in life, that's your fault, and it's only because you just don't have the brains for it. Like what you said, this is social
looking at
Darwinism.
looking at the range of social issues that we are confronted with, we are not even an egalitarian society. We are
Yeah,
very unequal as a society. What I feel, we have only certain models for success in our society. There are only certain models. If you fit these models or molds, you can succeed. And now, even constrained within these models of success, there are certain predefined pathways to success, out of which you can never succeed. Yeah. So this is the Singapore story. I think we all have to be very cognizant of this. And there are people who don't fit the model of success, which is maybe a meritocracy that's an academic meritocracy. It's not even a real meritocracy. We can break one spell in the future is the myth of meritocracy one day. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that is the meritocracy. And it's only a certain kind of meritocracy that rewards a certain kind of individuals. But who is to say that this one friend of yours, with the other dimensions of intelligence this person has, given another environment, this person would have thrived and be much more successful and be able to support his or her family. So we have a very narrow dimension or definition of what success is. These are models. And then to achieve these narrow dimensions of success, we have narrow pathways, which further restrict anyone's ability. So it's the odds are all stacked against this friend of yours.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
almost
and
impossible.
yeah, and you mentioned about falling through the cracks, right? I mean, yeah, actually, I also did think about, like, to our audiences, maybe if they aren't aware by now, we are two individuals who have worked in civil service. We have gone through our battles, and of course we can't share in detail what we can't share state secrets, obviously. But I guess maybe let's take this time right now to share maybe what our takeaway lessons are, generally speaking, from our time in civil service. So Santosh, maybe you want to go first. Just if you have one big thing you want to say about the civil service in Singapore in general, or how governance works, what would you say?
There is rarely a sincere search for the truth. It's a lot about
That's
who
powerful,
you know.
man. That's powerful.
It's all about who you know and whether this person is connected to someone of influence or power. Yeah. And who has got access to the corridors of power. That's all that matters. It's never about the person who speaks the truth or who has got a sincere attempt or inquiry at what is the right thing to do. My biggest learning is that it's all about who you know and whether you're closely related to this person. That's the only guarantor. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
love it, man.
of your progression.
Yeah,
If you're in the person's good books, if you're in the person's mold, liking, personality, you've got a good fast track. But the moment you don't toe the line, or you don't fit the bill, right, that they're looking for, the qualities, you're off you go. Yeah. You're not valued.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
This is
that is not even egalitarian or fair as an environment. Yeah.
It's not even meritocratic.
It's not even
put it that way.
meritocratic. No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing about civil service, I mean, you want to tell, I got so many things. So
No,
another thing is
go for it.
the ivory tower syndrome is very real. Ivory tower syndrome, a political elite or a governing elite that is disconnected with the ground sentiments and that thinks that it knows best for the people, that doesn't trust the people, that always looks at the people with mistrust, that these people needs to be handled, they need to be managed. That's the psyche and perception the ruling or governing elite have of the masses. It's a very demeaning mindset or perception of the people below. It's very elitist in nature. Yeah. Another thing about a civil service is filtering up the chain of command. As long as they're ground insights, these ground insights are as they move up the chain of command, if they don't fit the ideal narrative we want to put out, it will never be shared. It will never be addressed. These things are swept under the carpet and we'll never address these issues. Yeah. So yeah, I don't feel it's a system that's got integrity at all.
Yeah. I definitely want to concur with everything you said and kind of sum it up with one grand statement, one big takeaway for me. And that is, we don't have a democracy. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because, like, I get it, right? Formally speaking, we are a democracy. We have elections, we have free and fair elections. We have somewhat like institutions that operate for public interest. Not denying all of that. Like, formally speaking, these things do exist. But when we talk about the quality of a democracy, that's what we don't have. And how I would want to illustrate this is with a very simple way of explaining it, is that we as a citizen don't get to speak directly to our leaders. Yeah. So as you mentioned just now, there's a lot of filtering. So even if you are a civil servant, and this is no, the two of us are not trying to bag on civil servants at all. We're talking about the system as a whole. We're not even trying to insist that one individual or
It's
several
not the
individuals.
talent, it's the
Yeah,
culture.
it's not the talent.
Yeah, they are very talented people, but their potential is not maximized just because of the culture. It's just the culture and the structure.
Yeah. And to me, it's like I want people to think of it in a very simple way. And because even if you're someone not in Singapore and you're someone, say, in another country, it's a simple question for you, which is, do you get a chance to tell your representative what you really want for the country? So maybe in Singapore, just to take an example that can be very innocuous, nothing too politically partisan. Maybe if you wanted to have longer maternity leave, or you want paternity leave to be mandated and set at a certain, like, say, 2 months or something like that. Like, let's say you just want something like that. And theoretically, the PAP or the ruling party would not be against it, because they would say that they're for pro-family values and they would like to, give people, definitely one thing on the agenda is to increase the fertility rate in Singapore. So we have one of the lowest fertility rates in the world. And this has always been, it's not an open, it's not a secret. I mean, openly, we are trying to encourage population growth. And at least within the family ministries, they've been combating this problem with all sorts of financial incentives. But the hard and truth lesson is that financial incentives are not enough, right? People really need an overhaul of the work-life balance and lifestyle in Singapore, right? And of course, maybe you just really got to put that emphasis and that priority on people being able to spend to have time with their kids and quality care, for young children. But we just don't go there, and we just we have researchers basically doing that kind of work, but essentially you as a citizen have no contributive input, or have no way of saying that perhaps as a country we want this and you just make it happen. So that's one way I would put it. And and I think that let me ask you, Santosh. I think that people in civil service probably would not dispute what we say, but they probably are okay with the way things are done. I mean, those who survive in the system, by the way, not because there are people like us who drop out, right? Because maybe we got disillusioned, we realized that there's only so much change we can make, which is true. We are just executives, we're not, managers, directors. But those who do survive in the system, they probably wouldn't really dispute what we said, but they just don't think this is what they want. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think when we are young, we are very creative. But over time, the system beats the creativity and the innovation and your outspokenness out of your spirit and your soul. So a lot of them are just numb to it. In order to have a secure rice bowl, in order to bring home an income so that their kids can have an education or something, they're just sticking to the status quo. And these are the very people who I think I see who survive the system. They're people who can just tolerate the system. Yeah, and they actually need the system actually for their own survival. So that's why they're content with the status quo.
Yeah, and I think also, like, along with some of the perennial topics we do talk about, which is, I believe that there will be people out there who believe in the elitism of the system, who believe in the legitimate justification for elitism, that public participation or democratic participation is to be frowned upon, and that we know better. We know better how people should be governed in society, and like, what are the things that we should make people do instead. So maybe just to make it more practical, right? Like, let's take something simple. Because this did happen, right? And there was actually a paper that was built or trying to be passed in Parliament. That was just simply about the idea that can workers be allowed not to check their emails after work hours? Very simple proposal. It's inspired by the French example, but that got shot down. But to me, I do not believe that most Singaporeans do not want this. I do not believe Singaporeans do not want a legal clause that actually says there's nothing wrong with not checking your emails after 6 p.m. Right? Yeah. But even for something like that, we don't have it, and there's no, I believe if there was maybe better awareness of this, or maybe if people felt convicted about the issue, because this is a small one, it's a very peripheral one, but if people felt like, okay, this is just super undemocratic, this is impinging, say, on my right as a human being to be given free time after work hours, yeah, this can be a reality, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to is really there's concentration of power.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the circles that make decisions like that. Yeah, and they hold all the levers. However democratic your processes are, as long as these people have all the levers, you can't do anything. And these
Yeah.
people want the narrative to be shaped to their advantage and to their agenda, which is economic in nature, GDP per capita, so you can have taxes. And I mean, it's very economic centric. It's all about GDP optimization. In my personal opinion, it was never about the optimization of the well-being of our citizens, the happiness of our citizens. It was never about that. It was all about GDP, growth, economic industrialization, development. Yeah, where's the humanity gone? There's no more humanity.
Yeah.
There's
And
no more humanity in our systems.
yeah, and really, I
People
would
are
even
mere factors of economic digits. They're just, yeah. And
yeah, I mean, I was going to say that it's one thing for this to be in our country, Singapore, but I also think this just kind of extends worldwide, because it's just the way we see the world right now, which is, if it's going to lead to deforestation, lead to increasing, exacerbating negative effects of climate change, but if we get to have a new phone or nicer clothes, let's go
pay
with the
our
latter.
ministers $1 million salaries
Oh, $1 million.
from the taxes.
Yeah.
And
Actually,
further their
actually,
own.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead first. Then I want to ask you something.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's for me, it's very clear. I feel like, yeah, we need people to be more in touch with the concerns on the ground, and unfortunately we don't have. Yeah, we don't have that kind of
Yeah.
political elite that is connected to the real issues on the ground and the struggles on the ground. Yeah, and that's very sad.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question, because I finally have someone to ask that's besides another friend of mine who has a different opinion on this issue, which is about the minister's salary and how high it is globally in the world. I mean, our ministers are paid way more than even American presidents, right? And I think, Santosh, you are probably aware about the defense, the arguments in defense for them to be earning so much, right? I'm sure you are aware. But I want to ask you, what's your take on it? How would you address this issue?
I don't think you can assess. I don't think money should be, or salary should be, an incentive for anyone to be to be desirous of wanting to serve the public interest. Yeah, I think someone should, and you should be modeling an example of, that you understand the concerns on the ground, and you do what it takes to eliminate inequality in our society. And for me, it's just unacceptable that and I don't know whether this is true, but I would like to verify this. But are salaries pegged to a composite of indicators which are mainly economic in nature? That's one thing I want to understand. Are the salaries, I know the bonuses of our top senior civil servants are tagged to a composite of indicators that are economic in nature, but I'm not sure about the salaries of our ministers. And what is driving the calculation, or what is in the. So there is usually a mathematical function that determines the salaries of our ministers, and what goes into that. What is the composite of factors and variables that go into that? That's one thing that I am quite interested to understand. And more so, beyond just salary, right? It's like, how do we even determine the number, and how do we determine who gets to be that person, in power, I think Yeah. If
Yeah.
not,
So
yeah.
Sorry, you want to say one more thing?
No. I think if not, then you'll just have people who are motivated by the money. I mean, one very important test is, okay, if you remove the financial incentive, if you remove it, right, will the people who are currently in power, will they still be there? Do they still want to be there? That's the true test of your desire for noble service to society, right? Yeah. I think that would be a good test.
Yeah, I love it. I love the thought experiment. I think it says a lot. So I can offer you what the what are the defending arguments, right? Which
Of
is
course.
essentially what they say is that, as you mentioned just now, they do peg it
Corruption.
to a composite index, and that's the idea that if let's say this individual, who is a very high caliber, competent, talented, potential to be a political leader, right? But if he's on the other hand more interested to say work in say the legal industry because he can earn lots of money there, so the civil service has to kind of what's the word, incentivize him and to nudge him to, hey, let's go into public service instead because you can earn pretty much the same amount of money and we need to attract your kind of talent over. So that's the argument. And then there's kind of another argument which comes from Lee Kuan Yew, which is he tends to say that when an American president say retires, then he generally has no other way of income. Personally, I think I kind of look into this and I don't agree with it. I mean, all the ex-American presidents are still filthy rich, right? And I mean, that's a separate issue. But the idea is that they're not left poor and living in dilapidated settings, or, there is no poor quality of life deterioration, right? They still live very well. But the idea from Lee Kuan Yew is that we need to make sure that even when a political leader or civil servant retires, he's still well taken care of. So whether it's pension or something like that.
I think the first argument that you made, right, misses the mark completely.
Yeah.
It completely misses the mark. Actually, you are actually I feel like it's a distraction. It's a tool for distraction. You are benchmarking with other industries to get the right caliber person when that shouldn't even be the right thing. It should be the selection. You should be focusing on a selection process that is 360 in nature. That means it should not be just decided by the person at the top, but almost everyone. People, the citizens, should determine who they want to be their leaders. And the leader naturally should be duty bound to want to serve his or her members of the society. I think that should be the critical thing, irrespective of the pay. I mean, the pay should be decent, but not obscenely high.
Yeah.
And not to be pegged. It's not about benchmarking, that's the point. It's about your desire to serve. That should be the most important marker for your qualification to want to serve society. That's the most important thing. And whether your people want you to be in service, to be in the seat of power to serve them. Yeah, that's the most important thing. It's not about the salary. Yeah. So I think maybe the other issue that we need to talk about, right, it's not just the salaries, the ministerial salaries, but how do we even select them? It's also top down. Yeah. And so you get an entire batch of people who kiss up and kick down.
Yeah.
If it was 360, it might flip the entire model. People who everyone wants to be the leader, they get promoted. Then I think it's fair that they get paid, but not obscenely high.
Yeah. So I've sometimes engaged in this debate with personal friends. Not much, just a couple, maybe one actually. But the idea is that really, I think what is the reason for these people to think in this manner is because they just think that, look, you got to pay people who are exceedingly talented and intellectually excellent in their minds, right, to be paid well. And it's kind of like this is the right of society to do. Like they need to deserve some kind of salary. And my counter argument, same as you, is that I'm not saying they need to be poor. I'm just saying they need to be paid at a reasonable level. Why do they have to be paid so grossly disproportionate to other world leaders? If other world leaders who have much bigger issues, who have will still lead a very good life, even post retirement, right? Post political office. If they still can lead a good life, why do we need to make sure that these people have so much money and so much wealth while they are serving their term? So that's one. And then two, I guess even though this is a cliche, but money and power corrupts, and furthermore,
Yeah.
as you
It's
mentioned,
just your
it's so top
loyalty
down.
it's just your loyalty. They're just
Yeah,
purchasing your loyalty with the money.
yeah. And furthermore, I think you're right? Like when you are already paid so much, it's so hard for you to uh going back to the topic about authenticity and honesty and being vulnerable. And then even as a politician, you'd be afraid to maybe what's the word for it? Like criticize your in-group, right? To maybe offer ideas that may be deviant or that may be just a little bit outside of the box of your own party ideology.
Just what
And
happened in
which is what happened, yeah, right?
in Parliament, right? Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, and what he said about, this person, he's
Yeah.
illiterate, he's illiterate.
Yeah,
This is what you get with an elite ruling class. He's illiterate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I wonder which school is he from.
yeah, and really to me, like the other thing I was going to say was that I mean I'm not going to run through a thorough history of the PAP here, but there have been individuals, let's put it that way, that have been ousted from the party because they may have said something that was a little bit dissenting, that they just was a little bit outside of the party line. And I think that's sad because I think that reflects to me a party that cannot handle its own internal quarrels and criticism. And then furthermore, these criticisms are not necessarily very scintillating. They don't destroy the foundation of the party. They just simply, in some sense, maybe encourage the party to be more progressive and be a bit more open-minded. But if they can't even handle that, then what does this say in terms of integrity and character? So yeah.
Your loyalty is bought with the money.
Yeah.
Your loyalty is bought. It's not
Yeah.
your sincerity to serve the citizens. It's your loyalty to the party. How sad a state of affairs is that? It's not genuine. So, people are your friends in your party. They are serving you just because of the money. How sad an existence is that?
Yeah.
It's very sad.
So
yeah.
Okay. So
Sorry.
before we get into more trouble with our NTPAP talk, but okay, let's move on. But still kind of related to this, which is my second question for tonight. So this is kind of philosophically, what's the word for it? Just kind of like a puzzle. Yeah. A challenge, thought challenge. So I ask you, what's an idea that you like to be true, but you find it hard to agree with? Or to make it more simpler, it's an idea that maybe you like, but it's just not working out in your reality. You just don't see that manifesting. So do you want me to go first, or do you have something you want to, or can you answer right now?
Yeah. Actually, this is very simple. It's the truth. Yeah. Actually, the enemy is not outside. The enemy is within. Like, yeah. So, all of this talk about like, I feel like, yeah, it's true. I've come to realize that I create my own enemies from within. Yeah. So that's something that it's a truth. And it's something that I have a lot of difficulty grappling with.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So sorry, I'm going to just ask you to elaborate more on that. So you're saying that you find the saying that the enemy is internal, right? That's what you're saying. And you think that that's an idea that is hard to come to terms with, or like it's hard to make it manifest or work in real life? Can you give me a very good detailed example?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm just looking back at my time, let's say in the civil service, and you make enemies out of people who are in positions of power. Like they're still occupying a significant amount of real estate space in my mind you. They have moved on with their lives, they are leading amazing lives, happy, cheerful, merry, and I'm here sulking.
I'm trying to cheer you up.
I know. Yeah. No, but yeah, I think one thing I've realized is like resentment only kills me from inside. Yeah, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, but thinking that the other person needs to die. You're drinking the poison inside, and that resentment is killing you from inside. Yeah, so this is something that I want to learn. I mean, I feel like it takes a significant amount of maturity and wisdom to grow into and to accept. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's one thing that I have a significant amount of difficulties with, like accepting. Yeah.
Okay, so before I go into my answer, you must know about Stoicism, right, as a philosophy.
Yes.
And I believe Stoicism has a lot of tips, actually, in regards to what you just mentioned, which is
Absolutely.
the idea that um, so maybe one thing I can think of is the locus of control. So you can't control what other people are like, right? I mean, how they've treated you, how they're going to be like for the rest of their lives. But you can control your internal thoughts. You can decide for yourself whether their words should hurt you, and you can work on reframing it using, say, cognitive behavioral therapy, because it's one of the actually practical applications of Stoic philosophy. So have you tried that yourself, or what do you make
Yeah.
of this?
No, you're right. So I've a life coach, and actually, this is my conclusion. His conclusion
Mm,
for me after having worked with me, it's self-hatred. Actually, it's a
mm,
lot of self-imposed hatred. And he says it boils down to two things, Santosh: lack of self-acceptance and lack of self-love. If you
right.
just accept yourself and you love yourself, everything is fine. It's as simple as that. But if you peel the layers of the onion, underneath that is a lot of self-inflicted
Mm,
harm and pain, and that takes time. I'm doing the inner work. I'm trying
mm,
to practice and do the inner work, but it takes time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to say first, I sympathize with you, because I've been through a journey like that. I don't know whether this will help you, but I'm just going to share it. So when I was in Polytechnic, so I'm probably 18 or 19 years old. So like I mentioned just now, during my secondary school days, I was really an outcast. I was considered a weirdo. People make fun of me, blah, blah, blah. And when I was in Polytechnic, I was still kind of like that. I mean, I didn't deliberately provoke it or invoke it. But I'll give you an example. So like and it's a funny one to look back on, but it's quite sad when you think about what was happening at the time, which was I was made to work with two people. So these two classmates of mine, one was a really good looking guy, taller than me, but people just didn't like him because he seemed really arrogant. And I mean, there's some truth to that. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I don't think he was such a like an a-hole. He wasn't so bad, but yes, there's some maybe not so savory aspects of his personality. Then there was another girl, and again this goes back to marginalized and ostracized, which is this girl unfortunately aesthetically wasn't very good looking. So I'm just going to like I said, be blunt about it. And furthermore, in the polytechnic course that I took, which is mass communication, everyone's more of an English speaking person, and this person is more Chinese speaking. So anyway, so in a group project, everyone chose their partners. The three of us were the leftovers. So we had to work with each other. Yeah. And so the three so yeah, it's like out of a movie. The three weirdos, three nerds have to work together. Yeah. And so we came up with a skit. And we came up with a skit, we had our presentation and we performed it. And to our surprise, like we got like top marks. And I think everyone was surprised, because it's
The
like, oh man, the
comeback
three
of the
losers,
outcast.
yeah, the three losers actually gaining one of the best grades for that particular assignment. And like I said, this is all so long in the past, but I do remember something like this happening where there was a mailing list. So back then, email was pretty primitive, and we had to respond to each other through a mailing list. And there was just something unhappy happening. Yeah, some unpleasantry. And this classmate of mine, the one that I mentioned, the one who's tall and good looking and very blunt as well, well outspoken, like he said, you guys are just jealous because we got good grades with this assignment and you're not happy about it. Yeah. And and so anyway, I mean, what I wanted to share the story and then to bring it back to you is that so I was like that, and there was one it was my birthday party. I think it's my 19th birthday party if I'm not wrong. And I had a birthday party, but I invited my classmates. But I felt really alone. I felt so alone. I felt like I was not connecting with these people. No one really cared about me. And so I actually went off to like a playground and I cried. I cried like terribly. I cried so hard. And it's still one of the most poignant memories of my life, which is just recognizing my loneliness and recognizing that I am, no matter what, always going to be perceived as the weird one, or like I'm not good looking, I'm not, I'm not going to be popular ever. Yeah. So I guess going back to what you said about self-acceptance, then there was a huge transformation for me. And this actually was kind of like the reason why I got into fitness, because I felt I had to work on my physical self. And so So oddly enough, I was kind of inspired by my elder sister who got into bodybuilding, and that's how it started, like kick-started for me. Even though I mentioned before that my elder sister and I are not close at all, but just seeing her working out and just realizing that, hey, I think I can do this. So I started doing that, and then that's kind of how I built my confidence. And ever since then, of course, there's been other what do you call it, tribulations, just other challenges in life. But I would say that from that day on, there was at least that seed of like recognizing that I'm not going to satisfy anyone. I got to be myself. And even up to now, I still find myself inspired by, say, songs or works of art, films, just with the message that, look, you really can't care about the world. You got to just be who you want to be and do what you want to do. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound so cliche and platitudinous. Yeah, and actually, I do want to discuss with you a little bit about this whole idiom about self-acceptance, like as if that's the final solution, because I don't think it is. But that's how I kind of found myself. So yeah. So
Wow.
anyway, now I want to ask you, and I hope my story helps you a little.
No, it
Helps a
does.
little bit in sharing
It
like
does.
what I've went through.
There's a shared connection. And I
Yeah,
think, yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah. So I want to ask you, right? It's a hard one for me to articulate because as I was talking about just now, on paper, I think you and I are very different. I don't consider myself spiritual. And you can see even with my life experience that I just spoke of, I didn't find God, I didn't find religion, I just found myself. And I decided to create my own identity. So that's why, philosophically speaking, you could say I'm much more of an existentialist. Um, so what I want to ask you, right, because I respect what you're doing, and I respect that perhaps, especially given that you're very um, um, knowledgeable about religion and spirituality, what is is really self-acceptance the main thing, the main obstacle that stops people from experiencing misery, suffering, and unsatisfaction in life? Is it really just about that?
No. From the spiritual lens, it's really inquiring to who is this self that is suffering? Who is this I? And if you go deeper and you reflect and introspect, the answers will reveal upon itself that this I, from the Buddhist lens, does not exist. There is no such self that is feeling suffering. Yeah, it just is. So I think, yeah, so for me, I need to combine my spiritual work with some psychotherapy. And the psychotherapy is the part about self-acceptance. But one day I'll still need to wean off that self-acceptance and self-love thing and go deeper into who am I. Yeah, so I'm not spiritually grounded enough to know that, I'm just consciousness and I'm not this body, I'm not this mind and all of that. Like, yeah, it's still difficult to embody and to experience, which is why I think the psychotherapy lens of self-acceptance and self-love still comes into play, which
And
is
when,
not in conflict with the spiritual part.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I know I'm not a therapist, obviously, but I just like you, I read my fair bit of psychology and stuff like that. Um, but what I want to ask you, and of course, just and first thing I want to say, first thing, you said it to me once before, which is now my turn to say to you, thank you for demonstrating vulnerability and talking about your inner issues so openly on this YouTube channel. So what I want to ask you is, what aspects of the self, right, are you trying to figure out, and are there specific layers? So I mean, I'm just using some examples, so don't have to assume that's the answer, but would it be something to do with like your ethnic identity? Would it have something to do with your place in society? Would it have to do with even sexuality, for example? Are there layers that you're working on, or is it more of a model like, okay, me, Santosh, I am X and X, X and Y and Z, I mean, what is it exactly, the questions that you're dabbling with?
Yeah, so this is where if we go deeper into the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, we begin to understand that actually there are many layers to this existence. And the layer that I'm obsessed with is this physical body, which has got the attributes that you talked about, right? Male and everything else that people with their usual identity crisis are
Yeah.
grappling with. Yeah, but for according to Patanjali, just one layer or one sheath,
Mm.
many other sheaths that we need to explore. So after this, right, it's called the pranamaya kosha, or the energetic body, the energetic sheath or layer. And then after that, it's your intellectual body. So that is Vigyanmaya kosha. And then you've got other layers. I forgot. But the ultimate one is Anandamaya kosha. Yeah. And so there are many layers. And if you understand, if you dive deeper into these different layers, you will attain a bliss that you've never attained before. And you will be at ease with everything in life. And life flows. And so that's the whole idea of spirituality, which is to move beyond the identification that I have with this body and this mind, and to understand that the other layers to my existence. Yeah. And if I can tap into that, then the problems that are attached to this body level existence, they just fall away. They're not significant, or because it's all changing. This body is changing. Yeah. So according to like other scriptures, there are many layers to my existence. Yeah. And my true nature is separate from all the other layers, which are like memory, ego, intellect, mind, body, and yeah. So these are all the different layers to my existence. Yeah. So it's just
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's just a science. It's what we call a spiritual science that helps us to transcend the false identification with the body and the mind. Yeah, and we can transcend that, you feel liberated. It's like, yeah, you've transcended. You're like enlightenment, right? You're completely, yeah.
Yeah.
So experientially, I've had some experiences of that bliss. And then what I want to do is to just practice and to be more in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like, what I would want to describe in philosophical terms is you believe in an identity that goes beyond the physical. So to give you kind of an example, so you, Santosh, born in Singapore, you are 30-something years old, you live under this family, you have certain hobbies, you have certain interests. But I guess what I'm trying to understand from you is that you believe there is still a self that's beyond all these layers, right? There is something about you that's intrinsic and that is not tethered to all the things that I just mentioned, even your own memories. And that's a very interesting philosophical question, because some philosophers have talked about the idea that, and they come up with, like, say, thought experiments, right? Like a person that is born in another person's body but doesn't have the same memories, blah, 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 is that person still the same person? I mean, there's all kinds of different interesting sci-fi type examples like that, where you do ask questions about identity and self. Yeah. And really, for this session right now, probably too much for us to get into. I myself would like a refresher course and study on this more. But at least the way I'm putting it, is that correct? Is my way of understanding what you think? You're right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So everything that is changing, you are not that. This body is changing. So every 7 years, everything changes. So if we are like 49 years old, so 7 times 7, right? 49. Yeah. So you've gone through 7 changes, and we are nothing of that. The mind is always changing. The desires we have change from young till today, and it will always change. Yeah, the memories and all. So actually, but there is one part of ourselves that is unchanging, that is limitless, and there is infinite, and there is eternal. Yeah, and if we can tap into that, then you are indestructible. You are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? It's so funny that you talk about this, and I actually have a aphorism that I happen to have come up with that I think kind of addresses this. So I don't want to talk about that yet, because I'll be jumping ahead. And I want you to take lead later when we talk about that topic. But I just want to go back to what I started this with, which is the idea of, like, what's an idea you like to be true but you find hard to agree with? Because maybe you can indulge with me on this. So I'm going to quote from Stoicism. So I just want to make sure I get it right. So I'm just going to read off what I copied down, right? In Stoicism, they look at evil as a question of ignorance. So just quoting directly, the idea is that people don't do bad things because they are evil, but rather because they're mistaken about what is good and bad. Someone who uses his power over other people to sexually harass them mistakenly thinks that his social status entitles him to pressure others to do what he wants. Someone who rapes mistakenly thinks that his physical strength and status as a man entitles him to simply take sexual pleasure regardless of whether the person is willing or not. According to the Stoics, these people are sick. Specifically, they suffer from, I'm maybe butchering the pronunciation here, amatia, a Greek word often translated as ignorance, but more properly means lack of wisdom. And hold on, yeah. The concept goes back to Socrates, who says wisdom alone is the good man, ignorance is the only evil. So going back to the examples I quoted, the idea is that the people who do such evil things, they suffer from this knowledge, and in many cases, it's sometimes referred to as intelligent stupidity. That it sounds oxymoronic, but it just means that smart and educated people can sometimes engage in unethical acts because of their unwillingness to reflect and learn. So this is the idea from Stoicism. I've learned a lot from Stoicism. I like a lot about Stoicism. And in fact, I do want to talk about it one day, because I think there's something about Stoicism that is attractive, that is very applicable. But this is the one idea I really cannot agree with. And I tell you why. Because I think it comes out also, Santosh, with you, when we talk about trying to work with people who are perhaps on the opposite side of the fence, when it comes to social issues. Or let's say, you and I, we do this channel because it is quite transparent that we believe in a certain social justice concept, and we do want society to be better. And to me, when I look at my opponents, and I mean that in the sense that people who just don't agree with us, or who would like to see the world in a different way, or maybe even proceed as it is proceeding right now, I don't look at them and think that it's an issue of ignorance, like as if they don't know that there are better ways to improve on this world or to improve on our lives. I believe they do know, but I think that evil is not like a black and white term that you apply. So you can't look at someone and say that guy is evil for the X thing that he did. It can be a continuum. Someone can be evil because he has malicious intent, and even maybe the micro acts that he does may not be like on a, may have no impact on a societal level. But the person can still be conniving, devious, and just really has the intent to hurt other people, and knowingly does it. Yeah. And I think even though I myself have not yet at this point formulated like a sound philosophy of how to define evil, I'm still reading up on that. But I just can't agree with this Stoic idea. I think it's beautiful to believe that some people are like that, which is true. Some people may be just ignorant. So maybe someone's clueless about climate change. Maybe some education may help. It's not to deny that's impossible. But some people just don't care. They like the world as it is. Some people deliberately fund misinformation campaigns, and as we mentioned just now, gain riches and wealth out of the suffering of other people, and they just don't care. Yeah. So that's for me.
Yeah. I think my reaction to that is that you can have good intentions but still be ignorant, and thus whatever you do, it's just paving the road to hell. So there's a saying, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So these opponents, whoever they are, right? They might have good intentions, but they are nonetheless under the veil of ignorance. They have their blind spots, and these blind spots aren't made known to them because of the privilege or the power that they have. And so whatever they do, they are going to cause destruction and misery nonetheless. Yeah. Now, I mean, as a citizen, we can forgive them for their ignorance and for the good intentions that they have, but we have to put a stop to it nonetheless. Like, we have a duty to not be passive and to accept this, by saying, oh, we are Stoics and, we should forgive them and it's their problem. No, we also have a duty to social justice or political justice and to do what is right.
Yeah, exactly. And you took the words right out of my mouth, because I think this is something that we discuss, just for our viewers to know, like sometimes when we finish interviewing a guest, we sometimes can spend another hour talking about, what we talk about on that content that you are able to watch. And sometimes we get into really long, but really engaging, intriguing conversations about say power, about justice, about maybe even like say can we reach out to people who may not agree with us? And like for me, my opinion as it stands right now is that you won't be able to convince everybody, and you try your best. Obviously, you try your best to be kind, to be cordial, to try to reach out. There's always this solution to attempt for, but this strategy to attempt for, but you got to also recognize reality and recognize that you can't get everyone on board, and you got to just make headway through your own determined efforts to change the world and be convicted about it.
And despite all of this, there's also always a niggling doubt, right? Who am I to say that my intentions are good, that I'm totally ignorance free, and I have the only right perception, right, of what is truth? Like, I think a lot of this is, as much as I'm pointing that one finger forward, like there's just like this tree that's pointing back at me. It's like, who are you to think that you have it all like right?
Yeah.
So that's something else that I'm always questioning, and I'm always like doubting myself on. Like, do I think I know best or better? No, not necessarily.
That's true.
Yeah.
So Santosh, what I would say to you, right, is that it's really a demonstration of wisdom that you already even perform some self-doubt. Because, like we were saying earlier about civil servants and other people who are in positions of power, they don't even do that. So that's already, like, to me, a gross act of them not having wisdom, right? Not
So
exhibiting.
one very good marker of wisdom or lack of wisdom, right, it's this air of infallibility
You're right.
that they hold themselves to. They cannot be fallible. They cannot lose the pedestal that they have. They cannot appear weak, and they cannot be seen as being wrong. And that in itself is a marker of a lack of wisdom, because Aristotle himself said, the more I know, I don't know. The only thing I know is I don't know. That is his premise for everything. So that speaks a lot about wisdom, or the lack of wisdom thereof.
And you reminded me of Bertrand Russell, the British philosopher, who said something like the ignorant like thinks they know best, but the wise sort of like they're more critical, and this is the problem with the world, right? The smart ones or the wise ones are critical, self-critical, whereas the ignorant are the ones that are so sure of themselves. And so anyway, Santosh, I wanted to also address this because I've thought this question many times for the things that I believe in. So let's take a simple one: degrowth. I believe in a degrowth society. I believe in that kind of political project. But of course, if someone were to give me strong evidence or arguments and just good supporting arguments and stuff that show me, okay, maybe it's not so viable, or maybe may not be so tenable, I'm still open to it, but it doesn't change the vision that I have. And furthermore, you would have to really produce really strong proofs and standards strong standards of proof to actually disabuse my position. And furthermore, I also think that sometimes when you have something like this, right, where you believe in a political vision, the steps to get there may be some things that you may not agree with, or maybe something you haven't thought about, you may be ignorant about, and that's very true for something as grand as like having a different society, like a degrowth type society. So I'm always open to that kind of ideas. I'm open to someone telling me that maybe this is not going to be feasible or realistic. That's always okay. But to me, this is where I separate like the facts and the values and the beliefs, where in terms of values, I still think, and I don't think you can even argue against that a greener society, a more sustainable society will be better for the human species. Like there's no way you can argue against that. And that's how I battery test my beliefs, right? I want to know like is what I'm believing in really sincerely for the good of society and humanity, or is it just a self-centered belief?
Now, I mean, that person will need to prove that if growth is not the cause for the destruction that we're making to the planet, then okay, we have someone in the room and we are willing to hear them out. But you need to prove that, and that in itself is so tough to prove. How do you even prove that? You need to disprove that for us to even buy your idea of continued growth. So we don't need you to just prove that growth is positive. We need you to prove satisfactorily that our arguments for degrowth are baseless. The burden of proof and responsibility is very high to go against degrowth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that was great. So I want to go back to what you said just now about because you reminded me about it. Okay, for our viewers, right, just to say, so I guess it's going to be our final theme for tonight. Santosh, you still good to go on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Good. Yeah. So great mental stamina, man. So anyway, this probably may be our final theme. Who knows? We could go on longer, but the final theme really I have for tonight is that to come up with an aphorism. So it just means like an idiom or expression that expresses a certain truth, about life or about the world. So you said something just now that reminded me of something I wrote, and what I wrote was something like this. So I'm trying to recall it from memory. It goes like this: inconsistency makes us human. Consistency gives us character. Yeah. And the reason why I coined that was because I was listening to some philosophical dialogue, and it made me think about what you said just now about change. You said the 7-year regeneration, cellular, what do you call it, regeneration, right? Yeah. And also about how identity, what makes you you, right? And well, this is my truth, right? This is my aphorism, which is I think that we will never be consistent as human beings in terms of what we're going to do in our lives. So, like I said just about my past, I probably was a very different person, but in some sense, there's also some part of me that's quite consistent. And I think that gives me my character, that defines my character. If these things still continue to stay consistent for the rest of my life, then that can be described as who I am. But in terms of me being a human being, I've made mistakes. I've done things that I would consider out of character. And there are times where it's due to environmental factors and being in a difficult position or situation that you do something that you really thought, hey, I shouldn't have done that, and I can account for that a lot. So I think all of us have this battle, and I think also more importantly, this is what makes the world and our social circle so hard to live with sometimes, because you may see your friend do something that's out of character, and you think that, hey, that's not him. There's something wrong with him, right? But I sometimes try to look behind that, and I realize that, well, he's human, so he's going to make a mistake, or he's going to do something that maybe he didn't think he was going to do, but he did it anyway, and that is going to be his life. And it's just going to be up to him to decide, like, is he going to keep that, or is that going to be his character? And some people may go through life, to me, always doing inconsistent things, right? And that's where some would say that that person is schizophrenic, like, may not have a real mental illness, but just really this person doesn't have a certain foundation or basis with what they do, and with the way they define themselves and identify as their character. And well, that's human free will for you. So yeah, so that's
I mean, something that came to my mind in response to what you say, right? The one mistake that we make, or the very few mistakes that we make or other people make, does not discount the good in us also.
yeah.
And the human mind has a tendency to focus and to grasp on the negative, which is the mistakes that we have made, which puts us in a situation of blame, self-blame, and then guilt and shame, or the mistakes of others. And then just by focusing entirely on that, the lens through which we look at things just becomes so tinted that we forget that there are actually very good and positive attributes of that person. Yeah, so I think, it's also about the nature of the human mind. Like, it just takes one mistake to tarnish a reputation that has been built on so many years of hard work and goodwill. Yeah, and I'm like, personally, and I know every person has just gone through this. There's no one who's escaped this.
Yeah. Do you have a aphorism you want to offer for tonight's thoughts?
Yeah. So there's one or two, but one which is quite, so it's really, the outer world is a mirror or a reflection of our inner world. And something that's similar to this is that we do not see the world as it truly is. We see the world as we are. Yeah. So those are like two aphorism.
I know it's quite it's quite a mouthful.
yeah,
But
aphorisms.
go
Yeah.
through, like, why did you pick these quotes? Share a little bit with us, like
Yeah, because I
what do
think
they mean to you?
this
Yeah.
goes back to the point you made earlier. The locus of control that is within me is my perception. It is the lens through which I look at things. And I can't change people outside of me. I can't change the objects, the situations, and the people beyond me. The only thing I have control over is myself, my my reaction, and yeah. And if I can just change this, I can lead a more peaceful life in a
Mhm.
very, very difficult world. Yeah, and so I think that's why I like this is a very important reminder for me that yeah, if I internally, if I feel not satisfied and at peace with myself, I will look for things outside of me to be the projection, outward projection of my own inner pain. Yeah, there's also another saying, right? Like yeah, so I'm walking around with a coffee with a mug with full of coffee. Yeah, so someone walks and someone like um hits hits me, and then the coffee that I was carrying spills on me, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
so the problem is this, like I'm carrying my own pain, and it's just one or two simple moments of what we call provocation, or yeah, I think yeah, you just get provoked, right? Yeah, and then yeah, I pinpoint everything on that person, I project everything on the person when I don't see that actually I've been carrying the pain on myself. There is fuel inside of me. That person is a spark and a trigger, but actually I'm carrying all the petrol and the fuel. I'm burning to flames. Yeah. So it's a lot about this inner work that I feel like these two aphorisms are helping with. Yeah.
Yeah, so now you've intrigued me. So I want to ask you this, and it's just for me to make the question even more direct, right? When you look at the world of people who have given you, who have made you suffer, let's put it that way, right? Do you see them as ignorant? Do you see them as insensitive, or do you see it like as if their will, right, is due to their own malevolence, for lack of a better word?
I would see it just as ignorance and insensitivity.
Mm,
Yeah. I wouldn't want to cast aspersions on their intentions.
mm.
Yeah, never. But yeah, it's just a moment of weakness, a moment of ignorance. And I have my own fair share of ignorance and weaknesses. And yeah, I guess, yeah, it's just about letting go. Letting go is the difficult thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Letting go and
yeah,
moving on. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I guess this does connect to why I said just now about the inconsistency and the consistency idiom for me.
Yeah.
Because I think that if you're able to look at these people as making,
Inconsistently human.
yeah, making inconsistent, doing inconsistent acts, let's put it that way, right? And you did mention something about ignorance. That I don't know. Okay, so to flesh this out in more detail, right? Uh, let's say I'm going to use a person in my life. So this person has a very tough boss, and this boss is really like, what's the word for it? When you micromanage, you drill, like being a drill sergeant, you really overwork the person, right? Yeah. So I see that nod in your head. Yeah. So I, of course, very common thing, right? Like a lot of us would have experienced, right? And So going back to what I said about character and human nature. So I try to encourage the person to look at that boss, not to say that what the person is doing is unreasonable. It could be unreasonable to pile so much work on someone, but to say that, but to look at this person with a more forgiving lens. What do I mean by that? That this person, this boss, basically, may be really ignorant, really really blind to the hardship of the kind of work he's giving. Uh, Maybe even to his best intentions, trying too hard to encourage people to be productive and to be a better worker, stuff like that. That's very nauseating, obviously, to the person on the receiving end. And yeah, and this especially these people who are in positions of power, like being a boss, right? They think that they are doing things with the best of intentions, but they just don't know, and they also are trying to because on the other end of the spectrum really is that they have to be accountable to their own bosses. So that could be like the CEO, or that could be like to company performance results. So, this person is not just being deliberately hard on his workers. I mean, he could just really be sincerely saying that, look, I got to perform for the company. I got to show the company that as a team, we're doing very well. And that's why I'm pressing you so hard. So yeah, so that's basically, a concrete example. And so what I want to ask you, Santosh, is like, when you hear what I just described, does it make you look at people a little bit differently? Does it make you look at, like, say, the colleagues that may have, say, insulted you, or may have ostracized you? Do you look at them like, well, they really didn't mean to do that? What do you think?
You're right. No, I think what you're saying, right, it's a very powerful force for healing. If you can truly and genuinely put yourself in the shoes of that person under the duress of all the circumstances that they were subjected to, all the environmental factors, I will probably be doing the same exact thing to myself. Then yeah, it lightens the load of resentment a lot, significantly. Yeah.
Right.
But it takes time and it takes practice.
Right.
It takes a lot of practice, like empathy work, right? Putting myself in the shoes and truly forgiving the person. I think wow, that's it's true. It's powerful, and this is what I cherish about our friendship and the fact that we are in a space like this. We give inconvenient truths out of love and compassion for one another.
Right. Right.
I mean, if we were totally, if it was a harmony as artificial as what you see somewhere else, then we will not be offering inconvenient truths from an act of love, but for an act of just saving face, for an act of just preserving a relationship or something like that. But here, I thank you for providing me with that wisdom. It's very powerful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I left civil service. Well, not entirely yet. At the time, it was somewhere in the middle of my stint. But I had a boss that was he's someone that I genuinely could like outside work. Like, he was someone that was just a, what do you call, again, I'm losing my vocabulary. But he's a slave driver. Yes, slave driver. That's what I was looking for. So he's a slave driver. Yeah. So he really, really worked me to the bone. And he didn't do it like in a malicious kind of way. It's not like he was like, oh, come on, Douglas, do more work, and all that. He was just too prudish for me. So that's one. Two, I think he tried too hard to please, like the people above him, right? And so, of course, that would have consequences on me as well, because I work under him. And look, it became really, like, on a personal, emotional level, like, I felt really squeezed by him. And I knew, like, he's not doing this to hurt me. He's just doing it because he needs to actually preserve his own integrity as well, and to and I'm open to the idea that he was just trying to climb up the ladder. So I understand. Yeah. But eventually,
at the expense of your well-being, and
yeah, of course. I mean,
you're one Mother Teresa, Douglas.
No.
Wow.
No, I'm just saying, like, as in, like, I understand the context behind it. Yeah, I didn't like it, right? And that's why I chose to leave eventually. So when I leave, I mean, I all I meant was that I transferred to another department. So that's what I mean by leaving him. Yeah. And look, when I left, actually, he was, to be fair to him, he threw me like a big farewell party. Yeah. And he had a
good riddance.
Yeah, who knows? That could be true. But anyway, there's still something more interesting that follows up from this. So he's older than me at the time. I'm younger than him. But he sat me down privately for a coffee chat. That's like towards the end of my departure. And I know he said something that was quite touching for me. He said, Douglas, like, you're leaving, but I look at you and I think that you're wise beyond your years, or you're mature beyond your years, something like that. Like he said, I really do feel sad you leaving, but I look at you and I think that you're gonna go to better things. So that's one thing he said. And then actually what happened was that years later, he contacted me out of the blue. And then he said, Douglas, I need to talk to you. I know it's been a while, but it's been a long while. We haven't spoken for a long time, but I really need to talk to you. And he said that he got a complaint from a colleague. And this colleague was someone that I was working with as well. And so actually at that time, the two of us complained to each other about him. Yeah, and he called me up and he said, this person complained about me and said I was a slave driver, blah blah blah. I was very difficult on her. And he asked me, am I really like that? And I said, I'm sorry to say yes, that's why I left. Yeah, and I told him, I said, dude, it's just too hard to tell these things to you at the time that we were working together, because I didn't want to hurt your feelings, and I knew that you was just someone that was trying your best to do the best for the work that we did, and I totally understand that, but you have to understand that it's very hard to broach this with you, and I had a certain tolerance level, and I felt like I couldn't be honest with you, inconvenient truth, right? Like what you said. And so I left, but yes, this
Wow.
continue working under you. I knew her feelings. I knew that she was experiencing all this because we both shared the same experience. And I mean, look, to be fair, like I said to this person, this ex-boss of mine, he took it in stride and he said, wow, thank you for sharing. And I think it woke him up a little bit. Yeah.
Wow.
So going back to what you said about inconvenient truths, sometimes it's really hard. There may not be the right opportune moments for this, but we got to find it somehow sometimes.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of food for thought. Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of come to a close. We've been going on for quite long. But I just wanted to close this session with a few words, just to say that, look, for our viewers out there, if you hung on this long, thank you so much for listening to us. I hope it was deep and thought-provoking and insightful for whoever's still listening. So that's number one. Number two, I did actually want to go through some news. I at least intended to have this opportunity within our coffee break sessions to talk about the news. So we didn't do that tonight, but Santosh, I just wanted to tell our viewers, right, that here in Singapore, we just had another case of migrant workers, or foreign workers, let's put it that way, who have died from a workplace incident. There's one incident today where someone died and there was some other severely injured people from a Tuas power plant, I think, fire incident. And there was another one that happened not too long ago. So these two events are not too far apart. So I want to just at least have a word to say that, look, we acknowledge this. This is not just a misfortune. This are really gross acts of misconduct and negligence by companies that are not serving their workers better and providing them better working conditions. We didn't manage to go through that tonight, but I hope by saying this, by mentioning this, it will link back to everything we said just now about civil service, about governance, about what does society value, and I hope that by bringing this up, we have a moment of thought, of pause, to reflect on where we are right now, and hopefully that drives us, to try to build something better. So that's one thing I just want to mention. Okay, Santosh, any last words?
My only parting thoughts to our viewers out there: if there are any spells that you want to break in our society, please leave them in the comment below. If you'd like us to discuss a particular topic, let us know. If you are a civil servant, ex-civil servant, and you are in need of some comfort, here are two of us, and we can share with you our life stories, and hopefully together we can band ourselves together. And there's this one parting talk. Not speaking out means that you're complicit in the wrongs and the harms that are happening out there. So it's important that we speak out and we come together and we galvanize our forces. And we have an act of participatory democracy, or a voice of the citizen to counter whatever acts of harms or hurts that are being perpetuated in our society.
Yeah, beautiful words, Santosh. I mean, we don't have to be like an activist, No. We just need to be, to me, an independent person. Just someone who's got your own train of thought, someone who's not afraid to share, and someone that is willing to bond as you said, with like-minded people, so that we promote independence and solidarity at the same time. So that's it. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.
We'll see you in the next video. See you.